Hello, and welcome to the Journeys of Folco Hornblower, the One Ring 2nd Edition Strider Mode adventure, written and narrated by me, Ryan Hewlett. The last thing Folco remembered was falling head over heels and coming face to face, all too closely, to a large rock at the bottom of a ditch off the Great East Road outside of the Old Forest and just east of the Brandywine Bridge. He woke up blurry-eyed to unfamiliar surroundings. A slight, spring cool breeze was flowing through an open window, birds chirping just outside of it. His head throbbed with a dull ache, and touching his hand to his forehead, a cloth bandage was wrapped around it. "Where am I?" he said to himself. Looking around, he could tell he was in the home of a hobbit, a well-to-do hobbit at that. But who, mind you, would it be? Folco found himself in clean garments, and looking around his room, he noticed his normal wear was clean and hung up on a hanger on an armoire against the wall. He stood up from the bed, and taking a few moments for the weariness to wear off, he peered out the window, showcasing a panoramic view of rolling hills, a meandering river flowing through fields of wheat, barley, oats, and other edible crops. The smell of cooked bacon, potatoes, and freshly fried eggs came across his nose, and then the pang of hunger came over him as his stomach rumbled louder than he had ever heard in his life. "How long have I been asleep here that I'm this famished?" he muttered to himself. Stepping out into the circular hallway that would be Bag End, the home of the infamous Bilbo Baggins, Folco followed the scent of breakfast and into the parlor. "Well, it's about time, my young lads. For a moment there I thought you'd be sleeping for the week. But seeing as now you're up, let's get you fed," Bilbo said excitedly. "Oh, pardon my manners. I usually don't have guests, and when I do, they're not of the Hobbit kind. I'm Bilbo Baggins. You've probably heard a tale or two about me." Folco stood, his face dumbfounded with the news, and about how of all places he ended up, it would be the home of Bilbo Baggins of Bag End. "As a matter of fact, Mr. Baggins, we met before, but I was much younger then. I'm Folco Hornblower, from the upper hillside in Bree. You bid me to come when I was old enough to in search of adventure. Well, it seems like you found me before I could find you, and in such a state it would seem, that I found myself here in your home without knowing it." Folco, puzzled about what had happened, rubbed his forehead and wincing at the pain of doing so. Bilbo let out a hearty laugh. "Well, I guess if I invited you here, fate seemed to play a part in me being at the right place for the right time to save you. When I found you, you had a nice gash on your head, and I don't suspect you would have woken up from that if I didn't come along. But sometimes fortune favors the brave, so I must commend you for taking my call for adventure and seeking me out." Bilbo turned around and waving Folco to enter the kitchen. "Come now, breakfast is waiting." Folco sat down across Bilbo, and in front of him was a spread of food he hadn't seen for some time. Although his family wasn't poor, they weren't the most affluent of the Bree hobbits, and this by far was the finest breakfast he would have had up to this point. "Well now, eat up. You need to get your strength up, as I think I'd like for you to do me a favor. Not for pulling you up from the ditch and bringing you back here. Oh, that reminds me. Your pony, he's safe and sound out back. Seems to be liking it here as well." Bilbo smiled and chuckled a little. Soon they finished breakfast, and Bilbo bid Folco to join him outside on his bench overlooking the valley and the water, and smoke some of his fine supply of Old Toby. "Well, it's not too often I sit out here with a descendant of the best cultivator of pipeweed known in the Shire, Old Toby. You've probably never been told, but Tobold Hornblower was the first hobbit to grow this fine plant that we're now going to enjoy together." Folco, with his ears and eyebrows perked, enthusiastically responded. "This I didn't know, Mr. Baggins. I was never told this as a child. I wonder why my parents never told me this." Bilbo chuckled. As he lit his pipe, proceeded to take a few puffs and blow out a decent smoke ring. "Come on now, let's see how the descendant of Tobold does to beat that," Bilbo grinning from ear to ear. Folco, having been taught the fine art of blowing smoke rings for some time, and of course being a regular spectator of the annual summer smoke ring festival in Bree, gave an approving nod and carefully cleaned his pipe, packed the Old Toby Bilbo handed him, and lit his pipe. What happened next could only be described as simply miraculous. At least that's the look that Bilbo gave as he saw Folco blow a smoke ring, actually two, so elaborately that the one ring that immediately followed the other went through the middle of the first, and then expanded, only for the first to then go through the second, before both dissipated by the cool morning breeze. Bilbo looked at the smoke rings, then at Folco. Folco couldn't hardly believe what he had done. He didn't know what had become of him. "I'm not sure where that came from. My apologies, Mr. Baggins," Folco said apologetically. Bilbo laughed. "Well, my boy, you sure live up to the Hornblower name. I would say even Gandalf himself would be hard-pressed to beat that. And you know, being a wizard, he can do all sorts of tricks." Bilbo laughed, and after taking another draw, "Well now, we'll forego the customary exchange of your pouch of leaf with your acceptance of my favor to ask of you." Folco gently nodded in agreement. "Good show. Well now, where was I? Oh yes. Well, you see, I have this missive that I need delivered to Bamfurlong. And the problem is, it's a little out of the way from where I was originally intended to be before recovering you from the ditch and bringing you back here to Bag End. Anyway, I'm in no mood to be a postman with the quick posts, as it were, so if you could do me this little favor, very much appreciated. And as you're keen to learn all about the Shire, well, there's no better way to go about doing that than walking it." Folco, visibly excited by the prospect of adventuring through the Shire, nods in agreement. "Oh yes, Mr. Baggins, I'd be most honored to attend this deed of yours." Bilbo, slapping Folco's shoulder. "Most excellent. Now let's go have a second breakfast and I'll send you on your way. No time to tarry. Your wound is all but healed, and I believe if you don't get your pony out from here, well, you'll never want to leave." Bilbo walked towards the open, round green door of Bag End. "Oh, and don't call me Mr. Baggins. It's bad enough that Hamfast calls me that despite my objections. I don't want you doing it too." "Very well, Mr. Bilbo." Folco chuckles, and with that Bilbo chuckled as well. By the end of the second breakfast, and after lunch, young Folco was ready, the missive neatly tucked in the inner pocket of his waistcoat. Billy the pony outside the gate to Bag End, neighing quietly. "Well then, good luck and watch your feet. You'll never know where they'll end up taking you. When you're done, explore a little, and when you're needing to practice more of your smoke blowing, by all means come back. Oh, and if you find any information you think is worthy of noting in my memoirs, by all means let me know. I'm looking for all kinds of adventurous tales to add." And with that, Bilbo turned around, quickly went inside Bag End, the door closing with a thud and the sound of the lock engaging clear as day. "Well now, Billy, hope you enjoyed that stay, but off we go. Let us hope this walk ends up much better than the last," Folco said to Billy. The route that Bilbo advised Folco take would bring him mostly by road to the marsh, where Bamfurlong is located. Now, Bamfurlong is the name of the farm owned by one commonly known as Farmer Maggot. Checking the hand-drawn map that Bilbo had given him, Folco looked and studied the map as he casually strolled down Bagshot Row and on to the main road to Hobbiton. From there, he would proceed to Bywater, then travel east on the Great East Road all the way to Whitfurrows. Heading south, he would come to an open field and cross the Stockbrook just on the edge of the woods that dominate that portion of the Shire. Apparently, having crossed that way a number of times himself, Bilbo said it would cut a good day's travel and wouldn't be that hard to cross, as there will be a number of passable fords, especially now that the spring rains are waning and the start of summer is fast approaching. All in all, Folco figured the journey, barring any misfortunes or delays, would take him about roughly 20 leagues or 60 miles, a respectable 5-day jaunt for any man, let alone a hobbit. So I've decided to take the episode, or part 1, from previous session, and the start of this as both one completed full session, considering that it's probably roughly 20-25 minutes of solo play for my player hero character. I guess normally one would receive the skill points and adventure points, 3 each for a completed session, but seeing as a session may be short or maybe longer, I'm going to opt for the Strider mode experience milestones for this player hero. Therefore, I've calculated with Folco, he will receive the following rewards. And I'll show it here on the screen. 1 adventure point, so he accepted a mission from his patron, so Bilbo's missive to Bamfurlong. 1 adventure and 1 skill point to achieve a notable personal goal, and that would have been to meet Bilbo and arrive and get into the Shire. And then 1 skill point, facing a noteworthy encounter during a journey. So the attempt to hunt the wild game, but falling and being knocked unconscious with a grievous wound. I'd consider that, it rolled as a noteworthy encounter, so 1 skill point. So all in all, he'll start the second session with 2 adventure points and 2 skill points in total. So being the start of the journey in the Shire, I will use the Shire journey tables instead of the normal journey table found in the core rules, or even in the Strider mode, at least until I feel, maybe the narrative, the story kind of moves that way, and I need a little bit something that's a little bit more heavy, I guess is the lack for a better term, than what's provided in the Shire journey table that's listed in the Shire compendium that's in the starter set. As the journey across from Baggins through to the Marish is approximately 60 miles, as planned, I will roll 2 travel rolls for a number of events that will happen during the journey to the Marish. The first marching test, I'll do a travel roll. So Folco Hornblower doing the roll within roll 20, as you can see on the screen. He actually fails. His target was 14. He got a total of 9 because he rolled an Eye of Sauron, giving him a 0, and 9 on success dice. So I'm placing the first event will take place within the first 2 days of the journey. Now let's roll on the Shire Journey events table and see what we come up with. And as you can see from the results on roll 20, as seen here, the Shire Journey event, trouble. Chased by dogs, wading through stick brushes and hedgerows, etc. For a fatigue point of 4. So checking the map, the first night of the journey will take place on or near the 3 Farthing stone. So let's see what happens. As Folco walks, Billy in tow, through Hobbiton, many of its inhabitants give Folco wary and inquisitive eyes, ever suspicious to any non-resident of the Shire, and especially of Hobbiton. And since Bilbo's disappearance and reappearance many years ago, Folco, not one to be completely shy, waved or nodded his head, expressing greetings of good days and fine weather we're having. Everyone met with a scowl, and a quick shaking of their heads, and back to whatever chore it was the other hobbits were doing. Not the most welcoming bunch, are they, Billy? Wonder what made them so foul? Folco casually asked, Billy neighing and snorting in response. Just outside of Hobbiton and along the banks of the water, Folco sat down and rested for a brief lunch. He didn't think to ask Bilbo if he had any, but it would have been nice to have had a rod at the moment, as fish were rising and gently breaking through the surface to eat whatever floating morsel, gnat, or other insect was had to be had. He continued on the way to Bywater, and as the late afternoon approached, both he and Billy were getting quite famished by walking along the road. The Green Dragon Inn presented itself, first by the delicious smells carried by the breeze, and then the clanking of tankards inside the stone walls and clay-tiled roof. Well, Billy, I think we deserve a nice meal and some ale before we head off. Looks to be some nice tall grass over there for you. I'll see you in a few. I shan't be long. Folco set Billy in a patch of grass near the inn, and he proceeded inside. Moments later, a just old enough to be here young Hobbit woman by the name of Belle Golworthy stood next to the table. Well, what will it be, stranger? She said in a quick and rough voice. Well, having not been here before, I believe I'll have whatever's on tap, and your dinner special, if there is any available. Folco, giving a casual smile. He's used to the prancing pony, and although his place doesn't have the same feel, he can definitely tell it's well visited, and hopefully the ale and the food is better than the welcomes he's had so far experienced in the Shire. Going out on the limb, eh? Well, coming right up, food will be a fair bit longer, but the ale is ready. I'll bring a half pint over and you'll just have to wait for the food. The ale was anything short of excellent, but by the time the fried fish and potatoes arrived, Folco was ready for another full tankard. The fish matched the ale and itself was quite delicious and filling. Now, more than before, he wished for the fishing rod, as he was sure the fish was caught in the water or the pool adjacent to the inn. During his bites of fish and tasty potatoes and the sips of the fine ale, Folco kept his ears keen to the conversations happening within the inn's tavern. Most of them had been about their day's work, seeding, weeding of their fields and front, side, and back gardens, and generally about everyday town gossip. But one conversation piqued Folco's interest, and it was about the Midsummer Eve parties that the old Took used to put on, with fireworks presented by the Grey Wizard himself. But no one has seen the wizard for some time, and it has been over 40 years since fireworks thundered in the sky. The conversation continued, but Folco finished the last of his food and ale, dropped a coin on the table for the fare, bid the patron farewell, and left. No one noticed his leaving, everyone being deep in conversation with one another. Billy was standing where he was left, and after giving a few brushes along his mane, Folco suggested that they continue on, as a few hours of daylight were still left, and he wasn't feeling a warm welcome as he thought so far. So why not a night under the stars, on a cool night that would be clear and calm? Not one to waste time, Folco did notice, however, Bywater was a very nice and well-kept place. Everything was clean, and the road through was cobblestoned, with barely any dirt present. Coming to the junction with the Great East Road, Folco noticed the marker in the middle, and the east sign in particular. The 3 Farthing Stone, 3 miles east. Whitfurrows, 32 miles. The Brandywine Bridge, 42 miles. And there were other place names as well on the marker, but he was more concerned with what lay eastward. And turning to Billy, Folco said, "Well, 3 Farthing Stone it is. Don't believe we'll make it to Whitfurrows before sundown, unless I ride you and you're as fast as a horse." Folco chuckled, and Billy neighing in amusement. And off they went, down the east road, the sun casting an even longer silhouette of them ahead. But this time in the evening, no traffic was to be had, and as he passed the occasional farmstead, no activity aside from the neighing of a distant pony, the mooing of a cow, or bleating of a sheep was to be seen or heard. Just as the sun was setting, Folco spotted the tall, freestanding stone marking the meeting place of the Shire's predominant farthings, the east, west, and south farthings. Folco and Billy settled for the evening as the stars began to appear, and letting the fire die down after his late evening snack and a smoke of old Toby, given to him by Bilbo, Folco fell asleep under the tree near the stone. Folco woke up to Billy pacing back and forth and neighing quite in fear, catching his breath and rubbing his eyes. Folco looked around at what could be spooking Billy so. Then off, behind the 3 Farthing Stone is where he saw it, and nothing he expected from the stories he's heard of the Shire. What he saw could only be ghosts to what he could tell. White, wispy things moved to and fro, an eerie sound sending chills down his spine. He packed up whatever he had out of his pack and quickly led Billy and himself down across the road to the south and on the other side. He went as far south as possible until the sight and sound of the ghosts were no more. "Well, I say, Billy, if it weren't for you seeing it too, I thought I'd just be a nightmare. But by golly, it's ghost all right." Folco's nerves were just about shot, and any chance for a restful sleep was all but gone. But, finding a nice patch of soft grass and a small hill, and with the night both clear and cool, Folco and Billy rested as peacefully as he could be expected, following that harrowing encounter at the 3 Farthing Stone. So having ended the session with Folco and Billy the pony resting quietly after the harrowing experience with the ghosts of the 3 Farthing Stone, rolled the travel roll, as you can see in roll 20, to reduce the effects of the fatigue made by that journey event. So I was able to reduce the 4 fatigue points down to 2 with that successful roll. We'll continue on with Folco's journey to Bamfurlong in a couple of weeks, as my real life schedule has got me on a much needed holiday. But if I can sneak in a recording or 2, I'll post the continuing journeys of young Folco and Billy the pony as they journey through the Shire to send a missive from Bilbo to Farmer Maggot in Bamfurlong. Once again, thank you for watching. It's been an actual pleasure and fun thing to actually be doing in between my live sessions with my friends with other games and whatnot. This has been quite enjoyable for me to do, and it's getting really to be able to learn the rules a bit better get the feel for the story, how to write adventures, maybe how to run the game as a lore master, but also for me to learn more and more about the world of Middle Earth, and that was developed by Tolkien. I'm definitely a novice, and by no means anywhere near capable as a lot of you that are more familiar with the works, and I hope to expand my knowledge through play, and hopefully you guys as well. Once again, thank you for watching, and if you are enjoying the journey so far of the Hobbit named Folco, please subscribe, and don't hesitate to leave any comments. Thank you for any constructive criticisms that you pass along, and we'll see you again next time. Cheers.